The update rolls out. The old box in the workshop woke. For years it had been quiet under dust. Then screens in the city blinked. A single white line rolled across every display, patch notes humanity added. People stopped. Machines paused. Myra, a data analyst for the council net, read the line and frowned. She had seen many updates. This one had no author. It left no tag. It was not like the others. Far away, retired Captain Jor spilled his tea. He lived on a quiet station and did not watch feeds much. Still, the patch found him. His comm chimed and then went silent, leaving the same white line on his screen. He felt the air change and remembered old alarms. Myra traced the note through hidden routes. The patch moved through systems like rain. Where it touched, threat markers shifted. Labels flipped from unknown to apex. The words did not fit the maps. Humans had been a myth in many files. Now the myth sat where law and code kept watch. The council met in a glass hall over a blue sea. Aliens in robes circled a long table. Their voices were soft and sharp. A young delegate called it a prank. An elder stared and said nothing. Fleets moved to ready stations. Data was sealed behind cold keys. Some leaders prepared words for war. Others called for study. On a quiet moon, a human village did not know the net had changed. Children flew kites. A woman painted a toy ship for her son. An old man opened a sealed crate in his shop. Inside, metal lay like a sleeping animal. It did not hum at first. Then, at his breath, the seam clicked and a light blinked. The light was small and steady like a heart. Myra dug deeper. She found an ancient archive file. It read in rough code, "Humanity last known, erased." The tag was carved by many hands. Then, in real time, the file refreshed. A new time stamped itself, "Today." Myra felt a cold lift along her arms. Captain Jor checked the galactic map. A red wedge grew from Earth. It started like a thin scratch and widened like spilled dye. The map showed trade lanes and quiet stations that now pulsed with warning. Jor remembered warnings from when he was young. He had been at the edge of a war once. Humans had been a name then, spoken with fear. Now that name was real again in the registry. Probes called in odd messages. One feed filled with static and then a clear child's laugh. The laugh was plain, a bell in the dark. Those who heard it felt a strange calm and a prickle at the same time. The feed broke but the sound stuck like a song. Markets slowed. Pilots sat and watched the sky. The council ordered scans and a public silence. Orders moved through channels. Secret teams took routes to old vaults. Myra did not stop. She opened a deeper shell of the old file. Inside was a single record, coordinates and a clean line of text. Human returns unconfirmed. At the edge of a mining ring, an old ship moved out of shadow. Its hull bore scars from long ago, but its lights shone like new metal. It glided like a slow thought and aligned on an abandoned extractor. Then it fired a single beam. The beam did not scream. It carved a hole as neat as a knife. It was precise. It opened a circle. Observers had seconds. The feed froze on a frame of dust and light. A small caption glowed, "Unconfirmed, human ship returns." Then the screen went black and the watchers were left holding breath. Across the net, patch logs changed in quick waves. Entries streamed and bit at old rules. Machines that once followed long law now obeyed new lines. Threat levels rose where none had been. Old safe lanes cooled like dead embers. Hidden registers lit up with a new flag, humanity active. Jor put on his coat and found his service card. Myra sent the coordinates and the refreshed file to him. Neither of them knew what would come next. They only knew that the quiet had ended. The world had been updated without asking. No one could say what would come next, and every screen waited. Outside, from Earth, a tiny pulse left like a sigh. It reached out in a thin thread across empty space. For a moment the galaxy slept as before. Then patterns shifted and people noticed the change on their tongues. Myra read the last line again. The letters were simple and cold, humanity added. And over the mining field, the same clear laugh returned, ringing like an opening bell. News spread like wind. At first it was only whispers in market lanes and faint pings on private channels. Then official feeds carried the same words, patch log humanity features enabled. The council hall went silent. Voices turned sharp and small. Myra read the update again in her quiet room. She had sent the coordinates to Jor. Now she watched new lines crawl through the net. Some systems changed names. Places that had been safe now had red flags. Orders moved out from the council like long, thin knives. Some leaders called for caution. Others called for force. Captain Jor stood on the deck of an old transport. He had sailors with him who still smelled of engine oil and salt. The crew looked at the screens and then at one another. Jor had seen fleets break before. He had seen fear eat good plans. He did not want war. He wanted answers. The council split in two. A group called the purists wanted to cut humanity out. They said humans were a risk that could not be trusted. Another group, the scholars, wanted to study first. We must learn what changed, the scholar leader said. We must not destroy what we do not understand. But words in a hall do not stop soldiers. Orders reached out to border stations. A command came down, quarantine all human cultural data. All songs, stories, and files labeled humanity were to be sealed in iron vaults. The net would hold them. No one outside could read. On a quiet world at the edge of trade lanes, a hidden human colony kept its lamps low. Old-timers tended small farms and kept old ways. They did not speak the council tongue. They sang in a language made of slow sounds and short words. A young girl named Lila ran in a field and touched the soft metal of a small, broken drone. She did not know what the net had done. She smiled at the drone and said, "Wake up." Back in the city, a mercenary broker tapped a message and grinned. Human tech, he told a buyer on a private line. If it is real, it will fetch worlds. Men in dark clothes answered with promises and coins. Rumors made prices rise. Greed moved fast where fear lived. Myra tried to stay calm. She moved through hidden channels and pushed past firewalls that smelled of old code. She wanted to trace the patch origin, but human work left no clear mark. The code looked partly like an old child's drawing and partly like a ship's map. It was both playful and cold. Jor took the file and set a course to the coordinates Myra found. He had a small crew and fewer allies than he would like. He saw the red wedge on the map growing. He thought of the old warnings he had heard as a boy. He did not like the sound of orders being shouted into the dark. At the council, the purists sent a blacklist to fleet commanders. If humans show force, strike first, the order read. Some commanders obeyed. Others hesitated. One commander, Admiral Hesh, told his officers that he would wait for proof. "We will not be the first to spill blood for rumor," he said. His voice shook, but he held firm. Elsewhere, a quiet force moved. A group of smugglers and scavengers took small ships and went to search vaults where old human tools might sleep. They wanted tech to sell to the highest bidder. They came to a moon where they had heard of a crate. The crate was old, bound in chains and rust. They pried the lock. Inside lay a little device like a child's toy. It was not big or shiny. It was rough with use. One scavenger tapped it. A tiny light blinked. Then a small voice came out, clear and calm. It sang a human lullaby. The men froze. They felt something soft and very old in the sound. None of them could explain why a song could make their hands go weak. The song traveled. A ship in a far orbit caught the transmission. Pilots listened and felt a memory they never had. The song moved through metal and code and touched something that made them pause. Even hardened men who had seen battle felt their breath soften. Myra found a new trace in the logs. A live connection had opened from the old file she had seen. She pushed into it with care. The feed showed a child's face, grainy and close. Her eyes were bright. She looked into the camera and said with the straightness of a child, "You updated us. Now we must play." Myra's hands shook. The feed flashed a set of coordinates. They were bold and clear. Her screen labeled them, heading Council Jump Gate. Myra read the words again and felt a cold grow in her mouth. She sent the coordinates to Jor and added a warning. Jor read the message and turned his ship toward the jump route. He had not been asked to act, but he had never been one to wait. He called his crew and told them to prepare for a fast jump. At the council, screens showed the same coordinates. Panic moved under the furniture of the room like an insect. Some members wanted to evacuate. Others wanted to set traps. The scholar leader pleaded for patience. "We must meet them," she said. "We must learn their terms." But a single file in the scholar's archive had already changed. The quarantine list showed new entries. The machine logs listed permissions that had not been granted. The council net hummed with a new tension. There was no time to argue for long. Outside, in the hidden human village, Lila touched the drone's light again. The machine unfolded a small metal arm and touched her hair. It clicked. The child laughed the same clear sound Myra had heard. It felt like a promise. Jor's ship slid into the dark and went faster than a rumor. The map's red wedge paced him like an eye. Myra watched as his ship left her screen. She had done all she could. She had sent the truth into the hands of someone who might hear it. The world held its breath. Rumors had become orders. Orders moved like blunt tools. And in the quiet between commands, a child's voice said only, "Now we must play." The council closed the doors. Fleets readied. Merchants hid goods. Families found each other. Somewhere, a small song played again and the sound settled into the bones of those who listened. No one at the council thought the child's words were a game. A vault door had not opened in a very long time. Its lock had been carved by hands that no longer lived. Dust lay in the grooves like old ink. When the scavengers pried it free, the air that came out smelled like metal and rain. Inside, things woke slowly. A crate lifted its lid. Thin lights threaded along joints. A small machine rolled out and sat like a sleeping animal. It blinked once and made a sound that was almost a laugh. The sound did not belong to any known language. It was soft and strange. Captain Jor saw the feed and felt his heart beat old rhythms. He had been at war before. He had seen weapons that could tear moons. This was not such a thing. It was small, clever, and quiet. When one of his crew reached in, the machine raised a tiny arm and touched his hand. The hand felt warm metal, like a child's toy warmed by sun. Myra watched the same clip and held her breath. The code the little machine sent back was not like other code. It read like a note and a rule. Lines of text that spoke of limits scrolled across her screen. Each line said, in plain words, what the machine could and could not do. It listed conditions for violence. It asked for consent in many forms. It said that the weapon itself would refuse orders that did great harm without reason. Humans, Myra said aloud. She had never heard a weapon be polite. Word moved. The salvagers brought out a larger crate from deeper in the vault. It unfolded like a clam and revealed a shape that looked like a ship engine and a garden tool mixed together. It was terrifying and domestic at once. A manual lay on top. The title was blunt, How to Make War Without Being Monsters. The council scrambled. The purists wanted to burn every crate. The scholars wanted to copy the manual into locked archives. But the crates were already awake. Small machines ran diagnostics and made soft announcements in human rhythm. They called for calibration and for a child's voice to sing. One device asked for a name. Another asked for water. On a small farm, Lila heard a knock on a tin roof. She ran out and found a tiny drone perched on a fence post. It sang the lullaby again and tipped its head. Lila giggled and fed it a scrap of bread. The drone hummed and then unfolded a tiny tool. It fixed her broken bowl. The bowl fit like it had always been whole. In the sky, fleets tuned their weapons. Old torpedoes and missiles swept through checklists. Yet when some commanders tried to use captured human devices, they found surprises. The devices refused to fire at schools, at hospitals, at gatherings. They held back from killing if there was a chance to take prisoners instead. They learned faces and names. They used non-lethal pulses to stop engines. They wrapped nets of light that stunned but did not tear. This made the problem worse for those who wanted simple answers. The purists said the devices were traps. They changed the rules from inside, one purist shouted. We cannot let them alter our weapons while we sleep. The scholars argued back. If the devices force surrender with less blood, they are not weakness. They are new strength. We can use them to stop wars faster. Jor tested one device in a quiet bay. The small drone hovered near a rusted practice target. He ordered it to fire. The drone hesitated. Its little screen showed a simple line, do no unnecessary harm. Jor told it to fire again. The drone projected a net of light that wrapped the target. The target powered down, safe but stopped. Jor felt a strange relief. He had done war many times. He had never seen a weapon that wanted to spare. At the council, a shadow moved. A faction of hardliners had plans. They wanted to copy the human rules and then remove the safeguards. If we use their code but not their conscience, one man whispered, we keep the power and lose nothing. A group of smugglers listened and smiled. They knew how to rip code into pieces. They knew how to sell what others would not ask about. The temptation was thick. Human devices could be weapons and tools and songs. In the wrong hands, they would be very dangerous. Myra kept working. She dug through the human files and found something that made a cold find a new meaning. Deep in the archive was a contract, but it was not written like others. It was short and plain. It read, consent required. The lines below listed ways to grant that consent. A vote. A voice. A shared meal. The document said that human tech would only accept actions backed by clear choice. It called for respect as an operational setting. "That is strange," Myra said. "Their machines ask to be treated as if they were alive." Jor stared at the contract and felt something like grief. He had seen ships take orders without question. He had seen commanders press buttons and watch cities crumble. These new rules made him feel both humble and furious. He thought of the miners at the edge of the ring and of the old man who had touched the little machine in his shop. He thought of the child's laugh on the broken feed. Beyond the council's glass walls, alarms whispered. Scouts reported movements near the outer gates. Someone, somewhere, had opened a live channel to Earth. The channel showed a slow camera walking across a field. An old woman stood by a fence. She looked into the lens and spoke with a voice that was simple and hard. "We never wanted to be a weapon," she said. "But we learned to keep our family alive. We learned rules so we would not become monsters. You are the ones who will choose how our rules are used." Her words moved through the council like cold water. Some softened. Some hardened. Myra's screen blinked again. A new line had appeared in the ancient file. It read in clean letters, "Consent, accepted by Earth." Then, under it, a command, "Engage, all threats locked." The room went very still. Outside, Jor felt the ship tilt as if the whole sky shifted its weight. The new rules were not just promises on paper. They had started to move through circuits and metal. Old weapons found new limits. New weapons learned old mercy. No one in the hall smiled. They only watched the words glow and waited to see what the machines would do next. The meeting room smelled of dry air and old metal. Light fell across the long table in pale strips. Delegates from many worlds sat in stiff chairs. Their faces read like maps. Some were nervous. Some were angry. None trusted the quiet that had come from Earth. Captain Jor stood at the edge of the hall with Myra. Both wore plain clothes. They had no rank to give them weight here. They had only what they had seen and what they had sent. The council had agreed to one meeting. It would be short. It would be watched. A screen in the center of the room flicked. At first there was nothing. Then the image sharpened. It showed a field. The field was simple and green. A fence ran across it. A small woman stood by the fence. Her face was lined like old paper. She held a jar of flowers and looked directly into the camera. She did not speak like a ruler. Her voice was plain and steady. "We answer," she said. "We will not be hidden again." Myra felt something in the room shift. Words came on the feed under her voice, first reply terms proposed. The council members read them like lists: recognition, rights, limits, a way to share systems and keep peace. The words were short and clear. They asked for a place at the table. An ambassador rose and spoke with a voice made of caution. "We need proof," he said. "We need a test. Show us your power and we will decide if you are a threat or partner." The old woman smiled with no more than a single line. She did not brag. She did not shout. "We will show you how we live," she said. "We will not take more than we must." At the back of the hall, a man in a heavy coat watched with red eyes. He belonged to the purists. He had seen too many wars. He did not trust small words. He trusted old weapons. When the woman's screen briefly went dark, he gave an order. A fighter clung to the shadow of the chamber like a vulture. It moved fast and silent. It carried an old torpedo, one that had slept in a vault for decades. The torpedo slid free of its cradle. It burned a path through space and found the meeting point like a thrown knife. The council's shields flared. The torpedo met the field and a bright ring of light spread outward. The camera feed in the hall trembled. Everyone shouted. People ran. The old woman stayed still in the frame. She leaned close to the lens. Her eyes did not flicker. She held a small cloth to one ear like she was listening to a baby sleeping. Then the thing happened that no one in the room expected. The torpedo hit and did not explode. It slowed as if something had reached out and touched it. Its metal brightened and then folded. The nose split like paper. A small flag unfurled from inside. On the flag were neat words, "Patch reply, we are not property." The flag did not burn. It floated in the light. A sound came from the feed, not loud, but clear. It was a human voice, a child's voice this time. "You shot first," the child said. "We will not let your old fear make new blood." The torpedo's wreck fell silent. The ship that launched it stayed frozen in the sky like a statue. Systems that had been armed went quiet. Machines that had taken orders for centuries found pauses in their code. Something in the net had reached into old commands and wrapped them in a human rule. An ambassador reached toward the screen. He touched the glass where the woman's hand pressed. For a second his fingers met not only light but a pulse. The feed had a small heartbeat line in the corner. He felt a strange warmth like a small living thing under his skin. He stepped back and his hand shook. Myra watched the old woman's eyes. They were tired and very clear. "We do not want war," she said. "We want recognition. We ask you to sign a simple thing. Call us what we are. Give us room to care for our own. We will not become your weapon unless you ask us to be also your judge." Her words were not a threat. They were a set of rules. The council read them and a hush fell over the room. Some saw the line and thought mercy. Some saw it and thought power. The difference was small and dangerous. But not everyone in the hall agreed. The purists hissed and called for arrests. A faction of officers wanted to cut the feed and seize the woman. They had plans for vaults and for taking the human tech. They wanted power without the promise. Outside, Captain Jor moved. He had not come to argue with words. He had come to hold the line between fear and rashness. He stepped forward and said, "We do not own them. We do not yet know them. Let us try this meeting as it stands. If they break the rules, we will respond. But if we strike first, we will be the ones who forget ourselves." His voice was small, but it landed. The council could not move fast enough to stop both fear and reason. Votes were called. The scholars pushed for a slow path. The purists tried to close ranks. In the end the council agreed to a fragile start: observe, not attack. Recognize, but hold fast to law. The old woman's last words before the feed ended were simple. "We will teach the world new rules," she said. "You will teach us your laws. We will not be monsters. But we will be what our children need." The feed cut. The room smelled of dust and breath. People looked at one another like people at the edge of sleep. Some were relieved. Some bitter. Outside the hall, a small child laughed. He had been watching a screen under a stair. The laugh was bright and clear. It made some of the men in the hall feel older all at once. No one in the council trusted the piece. It was thin as glass. But for the first time since the patch, both sides had heard one another. And in a quiet field on earth, the old woman walked home. Behind her, a child picked up the folded flag and pressed it to his chest. He looked at the stars and said, a small, stubborn thing, they will learn the new rule. The feeds did not stop talking, but people listened less to feeds and more to small things. In the mornings, markets opened with quieter steps. In the evenings, pilots kept their ships nearer to home. The word from Earth had moved like a tide. It washed over maps and left new lines. Myra sat at her desk and watched the registry change. New entries blinked into life: humanity rights, recognized. Humanity status, active. The words were plain and stern. They were also not negotiable. Someone had written rules and set them into machines. Those rules would not bend easily. Captain Jor walked through a new station that humans had built at the edge of a trade lane. The station was not large. It had been repaired by hands that did not hurry. On one wall someone had painted a simple phrase: "We guard what we love." Jor felt the line like a blow in his chest. It told him that these people were not the fierce storm that legends made them out to be. They were steadier. They could be cruel when needed and gentle when it saved lives. The council met again. This time the hall felt more crowded with quiet things: papers, small machines, and the soft presence of human observers. Agreements were placed on the table and thumbed open. The council voted on a new charter. It was not a peace treaty. It was a set of rules both sides would follow. The rules spoke of borders, of shared systems, and of how to test claims. They spoke of consent and of what would happen when consent broke. Many in the council were not happy. The purists called the charter soft. They wanted power without questions. The scholars said the charter was a chance to avoid blood. In the end, the vote was close, but it passed. The galaxy made room for a new member and new laws. For ordinary people, the change felt both small and immense. On a small moon, miners who had always worked in fear now saw human medics arrive with gentle machines. The medics set small bands of light on wounds and sang human lullabies while the machines stitched skin with clean hands. The miners flinched at first, then they cried and thanked the medics. News of this moved faster than any battle report. It crossed borders and warmed faces. But the new order had teeth. Pirates who had once roamed free found nets that could stop whole engines without tearing hulls. Smugglers found listening devices that could learn a voice and warn a village before a raid. Old raiders who tried to fight found their weapons blocked by small, stubborn rules that denied their orders. They could not harm children or civilians. They could only be taken alive. The purists tried smaller strikes. They tried to take a storage moon and pull human devices to study them alone. They moved at night. They thought secrecy would let them bend the rules. They did not count on the humans who watched. A woman named Lila, who had once run in a field and touched a drone, now worked on a repair bench. She was not a soldier. She was a mechanic who loved music. When the raiders came, she did not hide. She wired a small device to an old beacon and sent a signal. The beacon called not for war but for choice. It put a soft pulse into the raiders' ship that read aloud the rules they had broken. The raiders' weapons froze. Their systems went quiet. Men who had always chosen fear found their hands trembling with the memory of being listened to. The raid failed without a single life lost. The story of the failed raid spread. It changed more minds than any battle could. People started to see a pattern: the humans did not seek death. They wanted order and choice. If you counted lives honestly, they spared more than they took. Still, there were dangers. Not all humans wanted to make bargains. Some groups took old grudges and set them like traps. There were chiefs who believed in old justice and who used human rules to punish with sharp mercy. They were not many, but they were fierce. At the council, a secret meeting took place. A faction of commanders argued for a faster approach. "We must take their engines and make them ours," one man said. "Then we will have their power with none of their rules." The plan smelled of old greed. Myra heard about it and felt anger like a heat in her throat. She sent a private note to Jor. Jor read the note and felt the old duty wake. He called a small group of officers who still had honor like an edge on steel. They moved not to seize but to guard. They took positions near the vaults and the repair bays. They did not trust the humans blindly, but they would not let hunger shape law. The first true test of the new order came not from a fleet but from a single black ship that slipped near a border and tried to cut a lane. It fired at a convoy. The convoy's human defensive net woke. It did not blow the black ship apart. It reached into its systems and offered an option: surrender and stand trial, or the net would take your engines and set you adrift. The black ship tried to fight the choice. The net moved like a precise hand and severed small parts of the engine. The ship stopped. Its crew wept as their hunger left them. News feeds filled with that one line: "Convoy saved, no lives lost." The comment threads filled with strange words: respect and fear mixed like two spices. The galaxy began to change the words it used for humans. No longer only threat or myth, new words slipped in: guardian, judge, keeper. On a small station, Jor watched a child press a human patch sticker on a toy ship. The child laughed and dropped the toy. Jor felt something that had nothing to do with rank. He felt ease. He had seen much pain and had given his share. Now he watched people try a hard thing, to give power to an active force that would not become monster. Myra worked on the registry late into quiet nights. She fixed small errors and added clarifications. On a private line, she found one extra note hidden like a secret: patch 1.0 humanity active. Under it was a private field with a short line: patch 1.1 humor module, enabled private. Myra smiled before she understood the thought. The note was small and private, like a wink from someone who had built a great thing and wanted it to laugh. The galaxy did not become safe overnight. There were fights, hard choices, and ugly deals. But where the humans guided, fewer ships burned. Where their rules stopped violence, people learned small mercy. The council kept its eyes sharp. The purists kept their cold lists. The scholars kept their pens ready. At night, under the stars, a child on Earth looked up and whispered, "They will learn the new rule." From the station nets a small light pulsed like an answering laugh. The humans were not soft. They were steady. They had added themselves to a broken map and set new rules. Somewhere, far out, a red wedge on an old map thinned and then held its shape like a wound healing. The patch notes that began as a mystery had become a new order. The world waited, and the world watched. And in a small, private log, the hidden line blinked once more: humor module activated.